Just to kick off, can you both give me a small introduction around who you are, your various roles on the program, and a brief summary of the program for anyone in the room who doesn't know? Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa, and a real pleasure to be here this morning. Thanks to Tshikululu, and good luck, Leanne, with your new role. So I'm Vanessa Naika. I head up social impact for Anglo American. I've been long-standing in the industry, so I'm what they call a deep mining stalwart. My background is engineering. You might be wondering why you're talking about social, right? And I think that's the premise. As a mining company, your social DNA is intertwined with your operational footprint. So part of it is about that. So I head up a portfolio which includes the MCP program, which Musa will talk about. So as part of social impact, I'm responsible, my team's responsible for education. So I'm keen to understand some of the other mining houses and industries that are doing education. So education, MCPP, which is really around stable and capable state. We look after socioeconomic development in our mining sectors, as well as looking after social performance, that oversight and governance that Shamo spoke about. So quite a broad portfolio of activities. And I think, as I said, long-standing in the industry, understand the operational nuances and the intersections on both the social space now. The MCPP is a really special program, largely around how does private sector look at a PPP, a public-private partnership, and not without opportunity, but also with challenges, and we'll share some of those learnings today. Let me pause on that.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everybody. My name is Musa Jack. I'm also from Anglo American. As Vanessa indicated, I lead the Municipal Capability and Partnership Program. I'm not that long as her in the mining space. I joined Anglo American in 2019, but I have been in the local government space for very long time. I've got a qualification in town and regional planning. And then I got involved in working within some of the municipalities at eThekwini as well as City of Johannesburg and Pick It Up. And I spent a lot of my professional career time also working for GIZ. At the time, GIZ had partnered with the then Department of Provincial and Local Government to provide strengthening local government program to some of the municipalities in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, as well as KZN. So I've been involved in some aspects in developing some of the legislation that governs the municipality, the Systems Act, the Structures Act, and also played some role in the development of the white paper on local government. And when I saw the advert by Anglo American for someone to lead the Municipal Capability Program, for me it was a no-brainer, having worked within the system but also supporting the sector. It just made sense for me to be involved, but being involved now from the angle of the private sector in collaborating with the public sector.
Fantastic, thanks. Such interesting background, and the perfect background actually for the role that you're in now. I know that coming from a mining industry, that there are all kinds of hoops, obviously, that we all know about that you need to jump through. From an executive perspective, what drove Anglo to invest in this kind of public sector partnership, and how does it align with your business and societal value?
Yeah. Now, for anyone who knows Anglo American has a long-standing footprint in South Africa. And with that comes a responsibility. But it's a responsibility that we probably want to fulfill. So we're deeply committed to the countries that we operate in. We see it as being integrous to it. As a mining sector, the resources are the country's crown jewels, so we have to recognize that. But Anglo-American is twofold. So one of it is our operational strength, but the second piece is how do we think about sustainability, socioeconomic development, that social leg to it. And they are like two strands of a DNA. They're completely entwined, and it's been happening for a long, long time. Musa alludes to the fact that I've been long-standing in the mining sector. When I joined, I think it was around about the 2000s, Anglo-American led a piece of work called the SEAT, which was the socioeconomic, and many people in the social space will understand it, was a toolbox. It was leading across the world. So that identity, that strong commitment to the social agenda is quite important. But it's also because we often operate in rural settings. So, it so happens that endowments don't sit in a city. They're often out in the sticks where the rural requirements are really, really dire. Currently, Anglo-Americans, we're going through a refresh on our sustainability strategy. But one of the key things is how do we create thriving communities? That's what emblazons our thinking, how we engage. And thriving communities is integrally linked with municipalities. So that connection to municipalities, if you don't have a municipality that's functional, it's very difficult to create a thriving community around it, because the key mandate of a municipality is service delivery. And when in the mining sector, and there's many mining sector players in the room, in the mining sector, our communities are our consciousness. So when we think about it, when you hear of angst in the communities, they're normally not picketing outside of just the municipal gates, they're picketing outside of the mining gate. Here you're dealing with mine managers every day. The mine managers are dealing with municipal and mayors. And it's that ecosystem that you have to be very conscious about. If you neglect it, it's to your detriment. So how do you start to think about it? So from an executive position, this isn't something that's a sideshow. This is very much about how we think about doing business wherever we operate. I'm not sure, Lisa, if that's...
Yeah, it absolutely answers the question.
To what Vanessa has said, Lisa, just a practical reason why Anglo decided to design a program such as this. As Vanessa has said, because of the level of dysfunctionality that a lot of municipalities find themselves in, as Anglo-American and I'm sure other mines, we find ourselves having to step in and step up and be a municipality and provide the water, the electricity, fix the roads. That is really a legislative mandate of local government and not of the mines. But we realize as a business that that kind of a setup is not sustainable, simply because mines are not going to be there forever. So we had a responsibility to make sure that we get involved in strengthening the capability of these municipalities so that we gradually reduce the levels of dependency that municipalities have on us as the mining sector, but also support the municipalities to increase the level of trust that their communities that they are supposed to service have on the municipalities. But also we heeded the call by government in terms of the National Development Plan, where government has requested the private sector to collaborate and play a part in improving a capable state, municipalities specifically. So we saw it, fitting that we need to respond to that call and make our own contribution to improving the capable state, but not doing it by ourselves. And that's why the program is really about a collaboration with the municipalities, with government, to strengthen the capacity of the sector.
Thank you. Thanks, Musa. And just then, given that sort of call to action to get your municipalities functioning and partner with government on things that aren't necessarily within your mandate, what have you learned during the course of this program about de-risking systemic investment in government infrastructure while still maintaining accountability and momentum? Because as you very rightly pointed out, you know, the lines are quite blurred and grey in terms of who's responsible for what in a mining community, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm going to kick off, but I really want Musa to talk about
Yeah.
how we're thinking around a key de-risk mechanism, which is about social compacting. So Musa, I'm giving you a heads up on that one. But I think, you know, and here's some of the lessons that we've learned. The call to action that we heard from government, our relationship with government, I think that was a key catalyst to step up, right? And at the time, Anglo American took the lead. So we through our operations and our business units, being our platinum business unit, Kumba and De Beers, they funded the program. And this isn't a small program. It was initiated in the thinking started in 2019, as Musa pointed out, and we actually got going in 2020. So, you know, 5 years on or 6 years on now, you would like to see it. It's been a huge investment in time, in thinking, in putting together, but more importantly, in funding. You would have seen the media has covered this program quite extensively, but one of the things is we've spent close on to 200 million over that period of time. This is not small change, and largely through Anglo American and its business units. And I think part of it is some of the learnings that we need to think about is that a sustainable model? So if we're thinking about how do we actually de-risk, how do you think about that? So the key lesson is how do you start to think about sustainability where you're de-risking so that, one, you're coming in and you're supporting to enable to be more effective, but you're not actually creating a municipality within a municipality, because there's a huge risk in that. The second piece is really around how do you think about stepping out? You know, as Musa alluded to, all mines are finite. So mine life will come to an end. We talk about life of mine. And if you go around the west coast of South Africa, you will see life of mine playing out. So how do we think about functionality of communities and enabling municipalities to allow that? So if you don't design for impact at the very start, these are the lessons we've learned, the hard lessons, right? So I'm being very vulnerable today. These, yes, you've got the might of Anglo-American, but you've also got the lessons of Anglo-American. So you do need to think about how do you have a shared vision? And I think we all come together with a shared vision, but perhaps collaboration is hard. So it's easy to use the word collaboration. So yes, you would have a method. You need time for the method to actually show results or outcomes. And only then does the level of collaboration start to take root. Right? And then you still need to convince your other partners, whether they donor, philanthropic, or social investments, that this method is something that has weight and that you should buy into it. That takes time. So our efforts right now, 5 years on from the program, is how do we de-risk from a funding perspective on a model that we are seeing really good results on, and that we can then say, bring other partners in to either replicate the model in scale because you've got something to as a base case to work from, or secondly to buy into it from to broaden the regional development, right? So in the Northern Cape, particularly around the Gamagara and Tsatsubane municipalities, we are thinking about bringing other mining players and other industries into a social compact. I'm going to pause there because Musa will probably share with you the challenge of getting that done, because often it's not the challenge of the community, the municipality, the technical specialists. It's around leadership at the boardroom. So that's the struggle, right? But let me pause there, and Musa, you could add.
Yeah. So we work the CSR, which is a very credible institution that I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with, is our implementing partner for the program. So the program, as Vanessa said, is funded by us, Anglo American, but we've appointed the CSR to be the implementing partner on the ground. And I always say to my team at CSR that The one way of us measuring whether we are making strides in terms of this program is to work ourselves out of a job. That is the measure. You know, when you go to the municipal teams that we are working with, and they say to us, we really appreciate the support that you provided us last year to develop a water safety plan and providing technical assistance for us to be able to do this. Next year, when we have to review this plan, we won't necessarily need you. We'd like to do it ourselves because we're confident enough that we have received the necessary skills for us to be able to take on this responsibility. And we remain as MCPP providing support, but doing it from the back and not from the front. And I'm going to repeat the point that I made earlier. This program is not intended to be a municipality within a municipality. We know exactly what our space is and what our role is, and our role is to provide support for the municipalities to do what they are employed to do. Also, it's very critical for us to support in terms of supporting the municipalities to enter into a social compact. Government, part of the reason why we've got the challenges that we are seeing in terms of not having visible development is because everybody is busy. Everyone within government is busy. The different spheres of government are all busy. They've got a budget to do something. Us as the private sector, all of us are running around. We're very much busy, but we're all busy at our small corners and not busy co-creating and working together to make sure that the impact on the ground is being visible. So part of what we are doing as part of the program is we've introduced the idea of a mine municipal compact in the Northern Cape, where we're bringing together not just us as Anglo-American together with government, but we've also brought on board other mines in the Northern Cape, as well as the renewable energy producers to be part of the social impact. We've brought in the district municipalities, the province, as well as the national government to work together in the region of Tshikululu and Gamagara, because the mines that are operating in that space have got a lifespan of anything between 10 to 15 years' time. So the question that we are asking is, as part of de-risking, how can we make sure that the area of Tshikululu and Gamagara does not degenerate into a ghost region and a ghost town, as we have seen in other areas where mines have come to an end? How can we make sure that we start now to prepare and plan for economic diversification and identify other economic opportunities that are going to replace mining and make sure that the livelihoods and the thriving communities of that region is sustained when the mines do close? And that can never be done by government alone. It can never be done by the private sector alone. So the whole idea of de-risking through collaboration and through co-creation is one of the areas that we have learned. But one of the biggest lessons also, Lisa, is that us as Anglo, again, we just provide support from the back. This is government's responsibility. And what we do, we're just pushing them and making them take the leadership and the responsibility, and we're supporting them technically from the back.
Thank you. That was great to hear and understand. And you also sort of covered another question that I had around scaling of the program. It was my last question actually, but you did address it to some extent regarding how you've partnered with other mines, independent power producers, and I suppose it's two parts. It's scaling and then also preparing to exit in a way, and making sure, like you say, that you almost work yourself out of a job. Anything else on
Yeah.
scale?
So Lisa, just not just on scale, but you've triggered something.
Yeah.
So I think one of the key tenets of making this partnership, which is very, very complex, actually work, is trust. So Musa and our implementation partner CSIR spent in the engineering world we called it front end loading, right? But that early stage planning around understanding what exists. So yes, you can think at a macro level. You know, we all know that many of our municipalities across the country are dysfunctional, as Musa points out, and you see that in the press. You know that very few get a clean audit each year. But when you really think about it, you have to think around that macro space, but you have to think about the local context of that municipality. So that front-end loading around understanding where that municipality is in terms of its baseline is critical. And that takes time because municipalities are deeply, deeply technical. You know, they're not, we underestimate the technical capacity that sits in those municipalities. Our program is very intentional. The word is not capacity. We are not coming in to add a band-aid. We are not coming in to plug a vacancy. In fact, if there are vacancies, Musa will elect not to work in that department in the municipalities. Ours is to support capability. Ours is to mentor with that deep implementation support that comes from technical experts like our implementation partners to have a transfer of skills so that you capacitate. So I think it's really important that that methodology of trust is understood and trust is built. So, you know, when you're dealing with systemic change, there's a period and a lag period, often a lag period, but that lead up period is low impact from a tangible perspective because you are building all of the cultural, the behavioral, that brevity that comes with being able to work together. And I use that word because there's a level of courage on both sides of the table around building that momentum. And I'm sure Bia will speak about it later as well. So there is complexity to it. But what I wanted to allude to was the fact that yes, social compacting is one of the things, but municipalities that the lead up around the technical pieces, municipalities have to think about their futures. So often when we think about municipalities, we think about service delivery for today. But every municipality has a plan that looks out 10, 15, 20 years from now. And it's the actions of today that need to inform the future position. So when we think about mine closures or economic diversification, we have to think about what would this area look like in 15 years' time? Do we have the bulk infrastructure to support a shift in the economic activities from pure mining to renewables to agriculture? And all of that thinking has to happen with the municipalities. So it's that social compacting that Musa speaks to is critical for the long-term longevity of our communities. But the work needs to happen today. So scaling, when I talk scale, I'm thinking also scale into the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. And such an important distinction that you made between supporting capability and not adding capacity. It's such a critical distinction, yeah.
It's not without want that there is a need for capacity. It's just the way our program is designed is around the capability.
Yeah, and the model and approach was also very deliberate. And part of our, you know, when we were conceptualizing the program, we had to look at how is it that government spends about 2 billion annually on capacity building for local government, but the problem remains. And we learned that part of the reason is the model and the approach that has been adopted and that was being applied, which was merely sending experts or consultants to go do on behalf of, because there's agency, service delivery needs to be provided now. So the approach was not to think about longevity and capability development, but was about making sure that people get water right now and not think about how to develop the capability of the officials that have been employed to make sure that, yes, they deliver water right now, but also they are able to deliver water in 5, 10, and 20 years' time. So as Vanessa said, we don't work unless there is a team to work with in these municipalities. And it has to be a team, not an individual, because individuals get capacitated, then they look for greener pastures, then they leave, and then you have to start from scratch. But if you're working with a team, it means that if somebody leaves, at least there are other colleagues that are remaining. And also, over and above, transferring of technical skills, the program focuses on institutional capability, which focuses on developing processes, systems, tools that whoever joins the municipality, they will find the same systems, processes, and tools available to then apply. And in terms of the scaling up, we're working very closely with the Minerals Council on the side of the mining industry, but also the South African Local Government Association, because we are very keen to share the learnings of the program with other municipalities where Anglo-American does not have a presence. Because it's not only about, like you said, about safeguarding the Anglo-American interest, but it's really about contributing nationally towards the capable state. So we're very keen to share our learnings with other mines, but also with other private sector players who are very reluctant to get involved in the municipal capability space because of the challenges of local government. And from my side, Lisa, as I end, it is my call to action, to the private sector, that yes, it is a complex environment, but it's an environment that we cannot afford not to get involved in. Everybody is, local government is everybody's business. So for our businesses to succeed, to operate, we need government, specifically local government, to be functional. So we've got a responsibility to play a role.
No, thanks, Ms. And then you mentioned a little earlier, Vanessa, around the probably plus 200 million that Anglo has invested in this program to date. Is there anything specific that you wanted to say around using catalytic capital to unlock innovation, and the ways that you've thought about this program?
Yeah. So I think you do need to think about designing any social program of the sort. And look, we were brave, right? This is a space that not many people want to go into because of its complexity, because of its dysfunctionality. So that in itself was an innovation on its own, that Anglo-American was prepared to enter into that space. But you have to design with impact in mind. You have to be intentional and deliberate around the design from the start. And we might not have gotten all of that right at the very start, because you go in with a level of goodwill. But as the program evolves, you have to course correct. Not move away from your methodology, but you need to read what's moving, what's not. You also need to understand how your business is evolving, because these are funded internally. So Musa's had to make huge adjustments over the years in terms of shifting focus, getting stakeholder involvement, drawing others into it. So it's live, it's not stagnant, right? But here's where I think some of and Musa's alluded to it right now. So, and I'm going to step into this conversation. I'm leaning in. So, and that's important, because my background is around how do I bring operational value? How do I think about ecosystems and value chains? And how do we actually drive value where we have a brilliant expectation, a brilliant ambition, but it's through processes, tools, and people that you actually deliver on sustained outcomes. In the Anglo-American world, we call that the operating model. I can apply an operating model to pretty much anything, probably why I moved into the social space. So Musa alluded to the fact that you need tools, right? You need to really understand the processes. You need to really, and putting a process doesn't come to life unless you actually believe in the process and you not conform, but you use it. So when you start to put in digital processes as we move into this AI world, understand that you need to bring the people along so that you actually see the outcomes. And that's what this program has done. It's built those, what I would call chalking in best practice through process, people, and tools. That's the one. The second piece is the program has to also deliver some collateral. So we've built in standard operating procedures around it. So this is not the nice stuff, right? This is but it's technically probably the most important. So it doesn't get all the bells and whistles. What gets the bells and whistles is when Musa records that 13 of the 19 boreholes in Mogalakwena are functional. Yes, wonderful. But to get there, you had to have the standard operating procedures. You needed to understand maintenance. You needed to understand all the technical nuances that allow you to deliver that sustainably. And that's a lot of hard work. So what Musa has done with the team is they've built some collateral. They've built an asset transfer guideline. They've built an investment guideline as well for municipalities, because municipalities draw their funding through the fiscus. So you really need to, and those are the things that we want to scale. Because here's something that's shown in 8 municipalities that it has rigor. So, so when you think about these social programs, think about what you're designing to leave behind that will root and grow on its own, but it gives an anchor. It cements the foundation. And for me, it's about foundations. You cannot build capability to the next level if you don't have a solid foundation. So, yeah, sorry, I'm on my high horse.
Thanks so much. I think that's, that's well noted. It's around, I suppose, having that playbook that any municipality, should be able to.
Yeah, but a playbook that's co-created.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the other thing.
Yeah.
We need to really be conscious all the time as leaders that we are not overstepping our boundaries, and we are managing with a level of, with not arrogance. So constantly, keep that at the back of your mind. How are you co-creating? How are you co-opting, co-creating? All of that is quite important.
Okay. Great. I've got 2 sort of more technical questions, but before I get to those, before I get to those, and Musa, you already alluded to it when you said that we know we've had impact and we've been successful when you don't need us anymore. But how are you tracking the long-term impact of this work on a day-to-day level? How do you know? Yeah, how do you know if you're having the?
Yeah, so we had to develop a full-blown M&E a system to be able to track, but also part of our tracking means that we have to be on the ground. So the teams are not based in Pretoria, but supporting the municipalities in Limpopo and Northern Cape. They visit these municipal teams on a weekly basis so that they can see the improvements in terms of the work that they do on the day-to-day. And of course, we have to document all the improvements that we are experiencing. We spend a lot of time documenting the shifts that we are seeing, but also we're very deliberate in terms of designing what the intended outcome is, and how we're moving towards achieving that intended outcome. But I also want to say that within this space where developing capability is a long-term commitment. Our municipalities, it's taken over 30 years for the level of dysfunctionality in municipality to get to a level that it is now. We would be lying to ourselves if we think that we can reverse the challenges in a course of 5 years. You need as much time to address the challenges of local government. And one of the reasons why a lot of municipal capacity building programs don't work is because they've got a timeline. A lot of them are 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years time, there is absolutely nothing that you can do. But if you go in there with an outlook that says that we here and we in this for the long haul, because we understand the complexities and that it's going to take much time for us to make the shifts and shift the dial, then it makes it very easier then to achieve some of the impacts that we're beginning to achieve. So while we're very appreciative around some of the shifts and the changes and the improvements that we are beginning to see, we're also very much aware that it's just a drop in the ocean. The challenges in municipalities are way bigger than what the MCPP has been able to do. And that is why we need other partners to come on board so that we can be in a position to do much more.
No, absolutely. And it sounds like you're on your way to kind of forging, further partnerships and yeah, you need more. Absolutely. Okay. And then just on a slightly more technical level, at the level of systemic impact you've spoken about in the past, I think this question actually came from Richard Pfaff, who's our head of social impact, and unfortunately he couldn't be here today. But this is, if you know Richard, then you would understand that these two questions come from Richard, because the one is about the environment, and that's his real passion, is the E in our ESG spectrum. And this question is around the limitations of the current Municipal Systems Act and how the Act needs recalibration for it to be more effective and efficient, and whether you could elaborate on any ways in which you think that it could be addressed, what could be addressed in the Act to make it more effective and efficient.
Yeah, our colleagues might be aware that Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs have identified that some of the challenges that manifest at municipal level are originating from a policy level. It's some of them of the policy decisions that were made late 1990s, early 2000, when the new system of local government was being developed. Certain assumptions were made way back then, which have proven to be problematic 30 years later. And one of the assumptions, for instance, that was made is that the municipalities would generate about 80% of their revenue by charging for the services that they provide to communities: water, electricity, waste removal, and so forth. And that only about 20% would come in a form of government grants. But a lot has happened in the last 30 years. Levels of unemployment have gone up. Levels of indigency have gone up. There's been policies of free basic services, which says that households that cannot afford must still get water and electricity, and they need to get it for free, which means, therefore, that they are not able to pay for those services, which means that municipalities are not able to generate the revenue. So the municipalities' ability to generate revenue is very problematic, and is one of the challenges that municipalities are facing. So the review of the white paper of local government is also looking at the fiscal framework for local government. The other issue that the policy changes need to look into, when the system was being developed, we never knew that they would be operating within municipalities that are governed by coalition governments. The sessions of coalition governments has created a lot of chaos within municipalities. And that was something that was probably not thought about 30 years ago. So the changing in the Systems Act and the White Paper on Local Government needs to look at what needs to be put in place to make sure that the coalition setups is not resulting into dysfunctionality and chaos. Because when there's chaos, there's no decision making. When there's no decision making, there's no service delivery. So something needs to be done in terms of addressing the issue of the coalition governments. And also the other issue that the review must look at is the issue of political interference. And unfortunately, a program such as ours, we can never move into the space of addressing the issue of political dynamics and the challenges. That is something that political parties have to be resolved. But then there needs to be a political will, for the politicians to let the officials be and do what they are supposed to do, and then they do what they as politicians need to do. Because political interference have got a negative impact on procurement, for instance, on issues of corruption, as an example. So all these issues need to be resolved at a policy level to make sure that the chaos on local government level is being dealt with.
Lisa, just to add so that I do justice to Richard's question, particularly on the E of the EESG perspective.
I'm still coming back to that.
But I do think, municipalities work in a broad ecosystem. So national framing around environmental thinking has to filter down to a municipality level. It's all good and well that we'll have a national policy around carbon or whatever it is, but the actual doing and the implementation sits at the ground level. So if you don't see that filtering going down and then, the feedback loop feeding upwards, you cannot create those systemic changes that we all want. So you cannot think in silos when you're dealing with these complex, wicked systems. You have to think about all of the intersections and how do the different policies intersect at the ground level where it matters, and you'll see the impact, or you'll see the vulnerability. So I think that's really important. So a real example is in the Northern Cape, where we are starting to see a shift in terms of the power makeup in the country. Right here, you have huge land areas, tracts that are feasible for renewable energy. What they're not doing, which is fortunate, is they're not displacing the fossil fuel industry in the Northern Cape, but in the macro mix, that's where we are. So it's all of that. How do you land use, taking down flora and fauna in order to make use of land for other sectors. All of that is a municipality thinking level. So that technical capability, that intersection, the ability. Musa had a sharing session a couple of weeks ago, and one of the key things out of this program is how departments are now talking to each other. So those intersections and the value addition at the intersections is really critical as well. I hope that some way goes towards Richard's question.
Yeah, I've got a more technical one. Don't worry. What sort of access do you have as a company to influencing the conversations around the types of issues that you've just been talking about regarding, the act around municipal systems? What level of influence do you have over those discussions, or level of ability to actually even access the right people to have those conversations?
I'm going to get Musa to answer, but I'll start. So one of the key things, and I think Musa alluded to the fact that, we have the Minerals Council in the sector.
Okay.
Part of it is it aggregates that thinking around policy documents, etc. So we have mechanisms that we can use as a sector to raise our advocacy, to raise, our influence, etc. But there's also other bodies. There's the NBI, which, interestingly enough, COCTA engaged with them to actually facilitate some of the discussions around the white paper on local government at the moment. So there are various bodies. The lived experience might be very different depending on how much of an impact we have, but it's collective thinking, right? Our government has a process where, it does go out for public opinion, and as civil society, we should be engaging. So Musa has this lovely quote, and I think she used it today as well, that local government is everyone's business. So it's all good and well that we all stand up and complain, and we've got a lot to complain about because we're all taxpayers. But we also need to roll up our sleeves and get involved. And part of it is being conscious around what's happening, both in the lead up to local government elections, in the lead up to what policies are out there for debate and discussion, and to use the channels we have to drive some of that robustness and that influence. But standing in the periphery and not getting involved hasn't helped us for the last 30 years. So why do we think we can continue in that vein?
To add to that, I think we're very privileged in that as Anglo-American we do have the convening power. And part of that convening power comes from the fact that the MCPP, we've got an MOU with the National Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, which is a department that is responsible for local government. That MOU gives us access to government. And as Vanessa has indicated, we have been participating in the review of the white paper. And part of the reason why Anglo-American was invited is because of this program and the learnings that have come up of this program, which are very critical to make a contribution in terms of where the policy framework changes and adaptations need to be made.
Okay, no, that's great.
Could I just add? Yeah. So I think, Musa just mentioned the convening power. I could draw synergies to my education program. Being a respondent and having a voice at the seat, you need to come with something. And what we've done is we've taken those early risks with programmatic work to be able to showcase some learnings. So there is that catalytic piece, but government's quite open to being a respondent if you've got those case studies. We'll be hosting a discussion around robotics and learning very shortly. Again, both as a respondent and as a host in the education space. So these platforms are available, but I think it is because of Anglo-American and our ability to not just focus on the operational stuff, but to get involved in the broader agendas of the country as well.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think specifically what the ladies were saying now around we all have to roll up our sleeves. I think it speaks also directly to what's happening on Jozi Majozi, so I'm looking forward to that piece as well. Not to leave you out, Kabelo, because, but I think it resonates specifically with what's happening on that program. Okay, and then this is my final question before we open it to our audience in case there's anything from the floor. But the question really is around water management, and you also kind of alluded to it, Musa, a little bit in what you were talking about earlier, but it says here that a major component of the program has been assisting municipalities in addressing issues around water management. And as we know, municipalities are at the forefront of ensuring that these types of assets, like water, are managed in a sustainable manner. Can you elaborate on some of the learnings about how you've successfully managed those outputs?
Yeah. So when we conceptualized the program in 2019, we landed on 3 priority focus areas. The one was strategic development planning, which includes spatial planning, local economic development, long-term planning. The second one was around infrastructure management, including the maintenance aspect of it. And the third one was water services. And water the reason why we wanted to have water as one of the priority focus areas was because we're very deliberate in saying that when we measure the shifts and the impact of the program, we don't want to only look institutionally within the municipalities in terms of what is changing. We also wanted to measure at the level of what is the benefit directly at a community level, which is the reason why municipalities exist in the first place. So between electricity, waste management, and water, we landed on water, because it was around the COVID period, and water became a major issue because us as mines, we had to support the municipalities by providing water tankers to communities. But water is an issue it's a dignity issue, it's a health issue, it's a food security issue. So it became a no-brainer that out of all the service delivery service areas, water is the area that we wanted to focus on. And a lot of the municipalities, most of the 8 municipalities that we are working with are more remote rural municipalities where the dependence is on groundwater. And so some of them, the shifts that we made, when we got there, the municipalities didn't know how many boreholes they had. They didn't know where the boreholes were situated. They didn't know the conditions of those boreholes. All of those challenges that meant that they were not in a position to then maintain what they don't know, what they don't know where it's even situated. So we had to support them in terms of, locating all the boreholes where they are placed, but also doing condition assessments of all their boreholes, and then going even further to help them to develop the groundwater management plans, and also supporting them to access funding, government funding for infrastructure maintenance. Another area is around the water losses. Because they were not maintaining the infrastructure, there's a lot of non-revenue water, the water losses, which has an impact on revenue. Because if you're losing water, you're not charging for it, you're not generating revenue. So we had to support them in terms of, we had a water leaks repair program that we're supporting them on. But also we had to support them in terms of compliance, blue drop scores, green drop, no drop scores. They need to be assessed by Department of Water Affairs on an annual basis to make sure that they are providing not just good quality water, but quantity of water, and they get measured and receive a particular score. And they were really struggling with the blue drop and the green drop scores that they were reaching, because they did not have the right blend and processes and systems in place for them to then have their scores improve. But also because they did not have the blends and the systems, they did not qualify for some of the funding that is available from government. So we supported them to have all these foundational pillars that they need to have in place in order for them to access government funding so that they can then be able to do more.
Thank you. And that's just one element of your program, and it's so complex and detailed. Okay, is there anyone out there who'd like to ask a question to these 2 panelists? Any questions, comments? Isak and then Andronica?
Thank you. My name is Isak Minnar. I worked as a journalist for my whole life, but I'm now focusing on things like media policy, journalism in the public interest, digital rights, human rights. And I heard references to thriving communities and building a capable state and invitations on input on that. So I want to ask, if you look at the analysis of social investment linked to the South African Bill of Rights, for instance, a trialogue analysis in this magazine, then you see that there's certain rights that get a lot of social investment: housing, education, community building, a whole range of that. But there's 3 rights which is regarded as enabling rights for all the other rights, which is freedom of expression, access to information, and media freedom. And there's not even a blip on money given by South African corporates to support those kind of initiatives. So those rights that's supposed to assist with the exercise of all other rights. And I wanted to hear what would be the best way to actually encourage South African corporates to also invest in those things. I want to give you an example of your municipal project. Yes, municipalities are important, but what is also very important is credible information done, for instance, by community media in municipalities. They're the information brokers, but they're not getting the support, and they're slowly dying in South Africa. So we have, for instance, Google recently gave 100 million plus for that kind of initiative, which resulted in the Digital News and Transformation Fund that Tshikululu is now managing. But I think one can argue that they did that as a vested interest, not because they want to support, not from a rights-based perspective. The South African National Editors Forum is busy trying to set up a fund in support of credible journalism, public interest content, news as a public good, trying to promote news in different languages, making sure that there's as many news and credible information services as possible around the country. So I would like to have some advice. How do we get corporates to worry about those rights, invest in those rights? What should we do? Thank you.
That's a tough one. I'll put that disclaimer up front. And I probably don't have the right answer. But I do think, when you think about corporates, one is how do you, much like how corporates are driving advocacy, etc., it's quite it's usually championed somewhere. So what you're asking for is how do we also think about those other 3 really pivotal, foundational stuff, because if you don't have freedom of speech, if you don't have that civic action, you can't get the, all of the other ones that I talk about rolling up your sleeves if you don't have that consciousness being built. So I think I don't think corporates are not interested in it. I don't think I'm not sure why they're not putting their money in for one, but I do know there's other channels. So Anglo-American has what we call the Anglo-American Foundation. Each one has a strategic mandate. So these foundations are not built just because, they're not typically just philanthropic donor funding. They usually have a mandate that they're driving. In the case of the Anglo-American Foundation, it's very much around youth advocacy and women, but youth advocacy links to some of what you are talking about. So how do we engage at a community level through dialogue, through creating the spaces? And there might be opportunity there. And again, it's getting people to come in and, sitting and understanding and making those connections to drive those agendas. That would be one. I know we get quite involved in scenario planning, which has a leg to the media channels. If you think of Mistra, etc., a lot of that informs policy decisions. And Anglo-American as a corporate and other corporates are involved in those funding models as well, which creates a level of independence, because that's what you also want. You want to be able to work with the different pillars in society, which the media and journalism is a critical cog, to be allowing that independence as well, so that you don't, there's also the argument of not capturing, like you said, with the Google and self-interest. I'm not giving you a distinct answer, but I think you need to be tailored around the connection points, because for me, it's not just a very singular focus. When you're playing in the space, you realize that it's all connected in some way or form. So even if you're driving a youth agenda or a woman agenda, it's intersected by layers, and that layer is usually media, civic action, etc. So I think it's that connection point. So if I could give any advice, it's how do you get firstly the voice at the table to have that conversation, and how do you then connect the strategy that's either driven through their foundation or driven at the corporate from a CSI agenda, and find those connection points. Because I think you need all of the cogs of society to work to create functional society, and media plays a critical role. Yes, I could hear the same argument. I hear the same argument on all the views. There's just not enough funding, it appears. But I'm not sure if it's not enough funding or whether we're not directing the funding more effectively either. Because sometimes I do hear the CETAs have money. Other areas we heard municipalities spend 200 odd billion or million on capability. So it does seem like there's funding. But how do we direct them, more efficiently and effectively? Maybe someone in the audience can help as well.
Thanks. Is it a question related to the... Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. Okay.
I think in the room we're all converted in terms of what's the problem and how the corporates are coming into the room to solve for the community challenges. But I think the framing for me in terms of what these Anglo-Americans doing in the communities, it's not filtering through to how am I experiencing your good work. So that communication that he's talking about, it's how you frame it and the languaging. It must land at my household gets water because you guys have built capacity and whatever. So it's missing in action. So I think in one way or the other, you have to have a communication. Because I remember when I was within the corporate doing CSI, I used to be challenged in terms of, you're the only one that knows about these things. And to prove a point, they'll actually call somebody sitting in Northern Cape to say, do you know Vovo? Do you know what is she doing? Do you know about program XYZ? Those people won't know because we don't firstly frame it for them in terms of how we communicate. You'll be doing a good work and everything else, but the person on the ground or the household, do they know that the water that the work that you guys are doing is benefiting them in terms of getting the water in the tap? So it goes back to the communication, yeah.
Thank you for that. I think there's always opportunity to learn. We're not good at communicating our story. And I think that's something that the industry suffers from completely. You allude to it. Because these are, this isn't our normal business. Right? I can go on any podium and tell you about how do I process something, because that's where our strength is. So we tend to shy away from this because we're not quite sure if we're learning as we're going along as well in a lot of this. That ability to put it out there, you're never quite sure whether they're so complex. You're not sure whether you're touching all of the needs. And so you shy on the let's just wait and see kind of piece, and that doesn't help us either. So absolutely, your point is well taken.
Thank you.
If I may add, Lisa, again, a point taken. At the same time, we don't want to go with the narrative that is saying that here's Anglo-American saving the day. And the reason why we work with the municipalities, like I said earlier, municipalities exist because communities exist. in the first instance. If there were no communities, there wouldn't be a need for municipalities. So if the program is providing support to municipalities, it's because the benefit needs to be at the level of communities. And just to go to the first question, part of what we support the municipalities on is how they can engage better with the communities that they are supposed to serve. One of the areas is supporting them with developing the public participation policies and strategies and frameworks that enables the communities to engage, to be empowered to engage much better with the municipalities. When the municipalities do the IDPs, the integrated development plans, they are supposed to do those IDPs and co-create them with the communities. That is how the voice and the rights of communities then gets factored into what municipalities do. And part of what the program is doing is making sure that the intended beneficiaries of the existence of local government is the winner at the end of the day.
Thank you so much. We'll take one more question in this conversation, and then we'll move on.
Good morning, Andronica from Discovery. It's just amazing how my question is also kind of interconnected with the conversation, and it's really around what you've shared, quite powerful insights, and it starts talking about the blueprint that you have to think about sharing with the rest of the corporates, because a lot of us are into that space, right? And we are figuring all these nuances, because municipalities are quite complex. They're quite different as well. And so it would be great if you could, as corporates, share some of these learnings. And I guess the question is, what is that platform that would actually enable us to share some of these insights that starts to then speak about broad social impact that comes from the private sector? So that's number one question. The second one is, how do you make sure that, you're talking about capable state, but also it translates to making sure that you're bringing along capable partners. What are the key indicators that you actually look at to make sure that the community that you partner with is that capable community partner that you think of when you partner with them? Thanks.
Two brilliant questions. So on the first one, this is part of that sharing mechanism, right? Maybe a little bit slow on getting there. But, as Musa said, a lot of it is when you think about designing for by impact, if your beneficiary is your municipality, you want them to take charge as well. So it's those, and it's nuanced, but that's the reality of it. So for corporate South Africa, we want to start to highlight and profile what we've done, because we think it's a valuable case study to be part of the response to government around how municipalities can improve. So I'm looking to any corporate who wants to engage with my team on that. We've had an internal sharing session. Musa's on a drive around that with partners like Salga and Copta and the Minerals Council, where they bring their membership and interested parties, and you bring your municipalities and they share the lived experiences. We could design that. We could engage with you one-on-one and share our thinking. So I'm really looking to anybody who's interested to, now that you've got the connection, we are open, because we really want to scale this. We've got a brilliant case study with very good data sets to be able for you to take as a base case, and then think about where you, and as you pointed out, they're complex situations. So you would need, and on your second point around that complexity and having the right skill set, we've partnered with the CSIR. These are think tanks in our country, right? Yes, a parastatal that has a strong focus on town and regional planning, spatial planning, all of that stuff that's there. In fact, that team, when I meet with them, has done much of the work around GIS for the country. So, having the right implementation partner with the right skill set, depending on how you've designed your program, is also quite critical. So, and we do that with any project as Corporate South Africa, right? Anything that you're driving, you want your implementation partner or your internal bench strength to be supportive of delivering the outcomes. So we've been very intentional about that. I don't know, Musa, if you want to add.
Thank you. Thanks for the questions. All right, I've been told that I've been too slow and that I need to speed up. So without further ado, I'll come to you, Kabelo. Kabelo is here from the Optima Trust. For those of you who don't know, Kabelo will give a little bit of a background around her role and what the Optima Trusts are doing. But the reason that we've invited her here today is to talk about the partnership that Optima has with the provincial departments to drive long-term improvement in early learning outcomes through policy, capability building, and systemic co-design. It's a new program, a new strategy that's being implemented by the Optima Trusts. Kabelo, will you just do an introduction on yourself, your role on the program, and a high level of the program quickly? Before Liz
sends you a message again.
Yeah, sends me another message.
Thank you so much and good morning, everyone. I'm Kabelo from Optima. Optima was founded and funded by Anglo American, and it's managed by Tshikululu. It started in 2007, and the core mandate was to work on secondary maths interventions. So that's increasing the number of Black students who get quality passes in mathematics. But in 2022, we went through a strategic review to look at what needs to be done now to support foundational learning, because research has shown us that, students learn better when you get the foundations right. So we've moved away from doing secondary maths interventions to doing foundational literacy and numeracy.
Thanks, Kabelo. What, in your opinion, are the critical enablers of scale when it comes to education reform? And how are you embedding these within the public system for long-term sustainability?
I think the critical enablers of scale are collaboration with the departments. And I think a lot of times when we think about scale, we think about increasing the number of interventions or the schools that the interventions are run in. But for us as Optima, we're thinking about scale in the fact that we need policymakers to be part of, the conversation. And I always think of, scale has to happen in three functions. So one has to be from a government perspective. So there has to be political will. And we know now that the ministers have always been saying that, learners cannot read for meaning. And it's important for the government to get that right. So we as funders know that if we get involved in such projects, then we know that we've got the collaboration with departments, and we know that that's how we can scale our projects. The other thing is, when you look at the school environment, is the principal supporting the interventions? It's one thing to have, lesson plans and all of that, that you give to the schools, but are they being integrated into the calendar for the school day every day? And the third part you look at is the teachers. How are they embracing the materials that you give them in the classrooms? Are they using them well enough? One of the projects that we're doing with a collective of funders is called the Float Initiative. So where we are trying to, improve foundational literacy and numeracy. So this is a collective of like-minded funders where we are looking at how do we support the provincial departments to improve their literacy and numeracy skills. So right now the project is being implemented in 3 provinces. It's just started like at the beginning of the year. So the provinces are Eastern Cape, Gauteng, and the Free State. And we're looking at how do we support the provinces to write their own plans of how do they want to use the money to capacitate their teachers, because that's very important when you want to scale interventions. And also, how do they also include these projects in their budgets? Because we can't always be there to give the provinces or the programs money, but it's time where the provinces actually take on the burden of ensuring that the lesson plans, the reading materials are available to the schools and that the teachers are able to use them, and you give them the training and the coaching that comes with it.
Absolutely. So I suppose you're also deploying the capital that you have as a funder, not only for innovating the idea and design of the program, but also for driving the uptake and the institutionalization of this model in a way. And I suppose that speaks to your the float initiative with the like-minded donors and your donor group.
Yeah, I think when we look at institutionalization of the programs, we need to move away from just funding innovation. Innovation is important, and I think as NPOs or as funders, we need to look at ourselves as, the ones that can trial things for the department.
Yeah.
But I think it comes a point where you need to stop trialing and see where you've learned the lessons, and when you've got good interventions, how do you take them up to scale, and how do you make sure that, everyone can benefit from it. I think we always use the analogy in education that when you see a child drowning on the lake, you try to go and save the child. But then how long are you going to stand there and, try and save, all the children that are coming to drown, instead of looking up and seeing what is the problem that's leading the children to drown? And it's not to say that individual children are not important, but what is it that we can do to make sure that the system can support and stop other kids from drowning? So that's how we look at it in the sector. And I think when you look at, supporting interventions that have been trialed and proven, one of the projects that we are also supporting is called the Early Grade Reading Program. So the department has been doing EGRS studies since 2015. So we know that, there are three things that work when you want to improve literacy in the classrooms. One, you have to give the teachers training. You have to give them coaching constantly to support them, to correct them in the classrooms. They have to give you, issues that they've got in the classrooms, and you need to be able to help them with them. The second thing is lesson plans and giving them the reading materials that they need in the classroom. I think we know that with limited budget, we don't have enough reading books that, that go into the classrooms. We don't have the charts that kids need to teach them how to read. And then the other part is, on the LTSM that I mentioned, so I think those three things, we know that it helps and it works in building literacies in the early grades. So that's one of the projects that we are supporting, because we know that over the past 10 years, it's been trialed, it works, it worked in the Northwest, in Setswana. And this is important because we know that home languages, if kids learn in their home languages, then they pass better. And they're able to acquire other languages better when they are fluent in their home languages. And for us, one of the things that we always think about is, if you cannot learn to read, you cannot read to learn. And we're at a point where we're trying to figure out then how do we take these tests and these trials that have been happening in different provinces and make sure that we can scale them up to other provinces. So that's what we're supporting. We know what works, and we're saying, let's take it up and do it in other provinces.
And then, I mean, you've been talking about, implementing things that we know work. Okay, we know that certain things work, and so we're looking at trying to scale them and make them systemic. But I'm just guessing that it's probably much harder to measure systemic change as opposed to, like, programmatic in the classroom, like child by child type of change. What are you putting in place to be able to measure that change at a systemic level? Because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to implement something at a systemic level. How do you know whether those changes are taking root, and what have you put in place to measure that systemic level of change?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one. As a funder, we understand that the change is not going to happen today or in the next 2 years. It might happen in 5 or 10 years. Learner outcomes are the best way to see whether or not your programs are working. So there are tests like the early grade reading assessments or the early grade mathematics assessment that some departments are using to test where their learners are in terms of, the acquisition of literacy and numeracy. You can use those, but again, those are long term. But I think when you look at short and medium term, goals to look at whether your programs are working is, are your interventions being embedded within the classrooms? So if you give the teachers the lesson plans and the materials, are they, after the training, using them every day? Are they using the materials to learn and to build their own capacity? Are the teachers forming communities of practices, or is the department, supporting these COPs that enable the teachers to come together and learn as a collective from what they've, been taught in the training? And the other thing I think is, is the department putting this in their budget? We know now what works when it comes to improving literacy, but are they putting these resources in their budget, in their annual plans? And when we say that we have a program and we want to train teachers and coach them, do they make allowances in their calendar for the teachers to go to the training? And I think those are the things that you need to look at. Is the department really seeing your efforts as a funder or as an NPO? And are they coming on board with you to say, we know this works, this is great, we are going to help you to take this up even further?
Yeah, I mean, and it sort of leads into the next question that I had, which is, the program is very much a partnership, with the provincial departments of education, the ones that you started working with, and to draw on the conversation that we were having with Vanessa and Musa, how do you ensure mutual accountability and shared ownership with your government partners, and not have it be a sort of top-down, if I'm not there, nothing's happening? Yeah.
I think Musa spoke about it, that, the municipality is everyone's business. I think that's the line that you use. And for us, I think education is everyone's business as well. And how we ensure mutual accountability is there has to be the same vision. Like I mentioned, we know that 81% of our learners cannot read for meaning in grade 4, whether it's in their home languages or whether it's English. So we know that there's a problem that we are all trying to, rectify as the education sector. We know that the ministers have been calling on, partners to come and assist in getting our learners to learn how to read properly. So I think you need to start with the common vision, and we now know what that is. And I think the second thing is co-creation. The department cannot shy away from, creating the program, so that when something goes wrong, they can't say, oh, well, I wasn't involved in it. It's your thing, so you sort it out. So if they are co-designing and they are, present in the whole design of the project, I think it helps with the mutual accountability, because everyone knows what's at stake. They've got, things that they know that they are held accountable to achieve as a province. And we know that we've got money and we've got funders that we need to, or trustees that we need to account to. So I think if you work together in that way, in a collaborative way, it does help. And I think also when you work with governments, they have to see themselves as partners. So not just as people who you're going to say, I've got 20 million, here it is, you can do whatever you want with it. But they need to see you as an equal, so that when there are challenges, we can sit together in the room and sort it out. And even when there are successes, we can, share them as well. And regular review, I think, of the programs also help. Because then we're able to use data, we're able to use, the resources that we've got to see, do we need to change things with the programs? What do we need to take forward? What do we need to change to make sure that, our vision is realized?
Thanks, Kabelo. And then my final question is, do you have any specific advice to other implementers or funders seeking to work at a systemic level like this, which is never easy?
It's never easy. And I think people always think working with government is tough. It is tough. But you need to build relationships with them, and you need to build trust. So there has to be transparency. There has to be trust that you're building with your partners. You need to understand what you're getting into. So if you are expecting your results in 3 years, it's not going to happen in 3 years. So even in your funding or in your strategy, you need to make room for disappointment and for things not working. Because when you're working with a system, there are so many moving parts. So it's all interrelated. So it's not just one thing that's isolated on the side that you can fix and then everything works out well. And I think you need to spend time understanding the sector that you're working in. Meet funders, meet other NPOs, meet civil society, meet the communities to understand what their needs are. And I think understand where government is going with their plans. And that is going to help you when you are trying to structure your strategy and your plans and how you want to budget for your programs.
Yeah, I think that that's critical. You have to, and very similar to our previous panelists, you have to actually plug yourself into where government's going anyway. and then build and not create a parallel system.
Yeah.
And I think
No, you
that's
need to
critical.
know where they're going, and then you need to find a way to fit in.
Exactly.
So you need to go into their journey.
You go into
You
their-
go into
yeah.
their journey.
Cabello, thank you. I'll take one question from the audience on that segment. Any question? Oh, sorry. Sorry, Cesar. Okay. There we do have one. Yes, of course. Please.
One of the things yes, we support the Optimal program, but one of the things is we run our own ASA education program as well with the department. We've also got an MOU with them. The reality is mother-based learning is coming up as a prominent thing. So I think it's MTBBE. And the early studies in the Eastern Cape have shown that mother tongue does deliver results even in those subjects, STEM subjects like maths and science. How prolific is that take up to really drive mother tongue in that early stage development across the country? Do you have any insights on that?
I think we know that, mother tongue does work. And I think as funders, it's one of the things that we're also looking into funding. As I said, that our core focus is, on literacy and numeracy, but in home languages, because that's where you see the shift. So I think we are 100% behind the department. We're working with the Nelson Mandela Institute in the Eastern Cape that's also helping the department implement, the MTBBE in some of the districts, and as a test to see, what needs to work, which resources do you need for your classrooms, how do you train your teachers, how do you coach them. So we are working with our partners that side because we know that it's important to support mother tongue-based education. And we are calling on other funders, I think, to also get involved.
No, thank you. I think the challenge is not everyone's conversed in the funding sector because it's brand new. I mean, the thinking around it. We've been driving an agenda in education that says somehow when a child gets to grade 4, they need to understand by meaning. Yet you're dealing with, they're not only thinking about it in a language that's completely foreign to them, they're making this massive jump from grade 3 to grade 4. But I don't know if deep down, and I'm just being vulnerable, I don't know if funders understand that there's some rich data sets that reinforce that mother tongue learning does give you the results, right? But perhaps that's part of the awareness even from on the donor side.
I think perhaps the department needs to do more in engaging with the funders to help them understand. Because I think sometimes a lot of them, you might not be an educationalist. So these hard terms that they use in their research reports, you might not be able to understand them. And I think there's always fear when you're working with government. Like I mentioned, that things are slow, you don't know who to talk to because this unit, doesn't work with this one, the silos, even within the department. So then you're always thinking, if I go there, am I wasting my money? Am I wasting my resources in trying to form a partnership, with government? But I think we need as funders to move into, we know what works and let's try to make it work. You can trial it out, you can test it, because that's what we're also doing. We don't know what it's going to bring because the department, this is also new for them. And I think there's value in seeing yourself as, hey, let's start with the project. And then if it goes along well, then we can say, hey, we supported this when no one wanted to support it. And we know that it works now. And, the department does need funders that are going to help them trial and pilot and not just, do things that are already working. It's good to do that. But then who's going to trial new things, that we know work if we're not going to take the first step and do it?
And that's actually exactly what we wanted to talk. That was one of our key, the funding of pilot interventions and taking the risk on doing that. Cesar, one quick question from the audience.
Hi, I'm Riaz from Liberty Group. The question I have is, you spoke about research and information, that you have and you have access to. Is there a repository of that information? Is there different places others in the same field can get information, or is it so specific, only for your purposes? And also just in general, there must be so many people doing the same kinds of things. And, I understand that there are nuances and people may have a specific objective, but from an information sharing perspective, how do we do that better?
There's a entity called NASCI. It's, I think, National Association of Social Change Agents in Education. And it's a collective of funders, I think, and NPOs that sign up to be members of NASCI. And that's where you get a lot of information within the education sector. RECEP, that's based in Stellenbosch University, does a lot of research. So if you go on the Stellenbosch website, you'll find some of the research that the Department of Education uses when they are speaking or making pronouncements. I don't know if there's any other organization, JET also, yeah, and there's the Next Foundation. So there are a few organizations that focus on monitoring and evaluation of education interventions and also focus on research, and you can go on their websites. But we can chat after this and then I can give you where exactly you can go for more information.
Thank you. Thanks, Cabello. And there will be, if anyone wants to, stay afterwards and engage more with any of our panelists, then they can be free to do that. All right, last but definitely not least, and such an exciting program that we welcoming Bea here to chat about, Jozi Majozi. I'm sure that many of you have heard about this intervention on the radio and in some of the press materials, but it's a really exciting urban regeneration program, a very collaborative one and a very innovative one. A real reimagining of inner city spaces through collective action from communities, funders, creatives, and city leaders. So welcome, Bea. Bea, can you give us a small introduction on yourself, your role in Jozi Majozi, and a summary of your strategy and maybe a couple of the things you've done or how you got here? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We were running out of time. You give me the last part. I've got lots of words to use every day.
We're here.
But I'm going to try. So just some interesting background. I've always wanted to be a teacher. When I grew up, that was my life's mission. I want to be a teacher. I want to make a real impact in somebody's life. That was always my dream. Life didn't work out that way. I became an accountant. I didn't really fit into that box. I tend to make eye contact and not look at your shoes all the time. And I ended up in mining. So Vanessa, you think you're the stalwart. I've been in mining for a very long time. Anyway, through the journey that I've had in the mining, and I couldn't find my fit in it. I moved from supply chain to finance to strategy to, oh my goodness, I was everywhere except HR. Finally landed in projects where I think I learned a lot of skills on how to do a lot of things. So when Vanessa talks operating model, I think that is what has shaped me to when I got the opportunity to get involved with an organization or a movement that can make a real impact. That was a natural fit for me. I always wanted to do and land in a situation where you have meaningful impact in somebody's life, where you could use all of the tools that you've gathered throughout your career in your toolbox and use that somewhere. And what better place to do that than a crazy initiative like Jozi Majozi? And you have to be a little bit crazy if you think and you believe that you can change a metro around. So with Musa and Vanessa talking about the challenges in municipalities, and Gamagara is a small one. Looking at the metro of Joburg, how do you turn a city around, and how do you make a real impact? And a real impact. For Jozi Majozi, we are founded on the Constitution, and I don't know how many of you read the 90 pages. Put up your hands. Who've read the Constitution or even the preamble? Show of hands. Congratulations. Guys, you need to read the Constitution. You need to understand your rights. You need to understand that human dignity is the basis of our Constitution. And that is what Jozi Majozi is all about. We need to bring dignity back. We need to bring hope back. The people of South Africa have lost hope. People are anxious. They are full of angst. They've lost hope for the future. The kids are leaving the country in droves. What can we do to change that? So we started this crazy initiative, and I don't want to use the word Anglo-American again. I don't know if you did this on purpose, but But it was because of the convening power of Anglo-American WITS, which is an incredibly important partner to us, the crazy people of Nando's, and then IQ Business, with a lot of partners stepping in very soon after that, that we came up with, we can't let Joburg fall. We have to be the responsible adults in the room. Politicians have ruined municipalities. They've ruined our metros. And the influence of politics on the officials is tremendous. So without getting involved in politics at all, because that's definitely not my box. I'm still looking for it, but that's not it. So how do you get involved in a city? How do you do this? You can't change a city like Joburg alone. Nobody can do that alone. It is not even in the hands of the private sector to do that alone. Private sector we are suffering from donor fatigue. Everybody comes to you, oh, I need money for this. Oh, I need funding from this. Oh, you have to help in this. We have also, from a private sector point of view, and listening to you guys, we've fallen into that trap, I think, from Anglo's point of view. We can't operate in silos if we want to change anything. We need to break the silos. When we say collaboration, guys, that is a big word. And we say that so easily. The national government of unity and collaboration is easy. It's incredibly difficult. That is a big word to use. But what we've managed to do in Josie My Josie is put egos aside. Put your companies and your issues, put it to one side, and let's really work together. Because if Joburg falls, the country falls. And I know that is, and I wanted to read you the preamble to the Constitution. Now I've got the mic, I'm going to go. So leaning into it. But when you put your egos aside and when you are really, truly genuine in what you want to do and you're authentic in it and there's no hidden agendas, that's when you can get the magic to happen. So Josie My Josie is a coalition of the willing. That's what we are. Everybody who's willing and able to make a difference, to make our metro work, this is the place where you come. We all work together. We just super connect everybody into the same North Star. The North Star for us is bring hope back and instill pride back in our city. Bring the dignity back to the people that they actually deserve. It is our own faults we're sitting in the position that we are. If we want to be brutally honest with each other. We trusted government for various reasons. We all did that. But now it is time for active citizenry. We need to roll up our sleeves. You've heard that a couple of times now. So what is it that we do? We bring all of the corporates, all of the developers, property owners, NGOs, residents associations, individuals. It doesn't really matter who you are, what you are. If you want to make a difference and stand up and get involved, the moment you are involved, you are allowed to criticize. If you're not involved, my opinion is you don't have a voice. Be involved, make a change, and then you can criticize. So what we're trying to do, and I'm done preaching now, is in the revitalization of Johannesburg, there's a couple of things that needs to happen. And there's a couple, look at Joburg from the top. Let's say that's a puzzle, a 5,000-piece puzzle. You cannot complete that puzzle on your own. You're going to be busy with it for a very, very long time. Pieces of those puzzles, somebody needs to build the border, somebody needs to focus on alone you're going to be busy for a very long time. Bring your piece of the puzzle that you understand, whether you are looking at human rights from a human rights perspective, whether you are a corporate that is involved in education, whether you're involved in safety and security, whether you are in policy and procedures and SALGA and government or corporate partners. If we do this, really do this together, it is not that difficult. It's not going to be the quickest process in the world, but the will is there. And having worked with Josie My Josie now we've been busy for almost 3 years, the relationships that we formed with government, local government, provincial government, national government, you have to have that conversation and build the trust. You've also mentioned, without that trust, and trust is earned, you need to be able to show that you are there. No, we're not going to do your jobs for you. No, we're not going to form a municipality within a municipality. We are going to support you, lift you, just get you out of this massive hole that has been dug that is Joburg at the moment. Once we see that you are responsible enough and capable enough to run this on your own, then the assets will be given back to you to run. While we're doing that, so where our process is a little bit different to where you guys are busy with, we need to be doing the work as well. It's the government, local, well, Joburg for that matter, doesn't have the resources, whether it's financial or human resources. There's not enough resources in the city. So when we talk potholes, when you talk streetlights, when you talk reinstatement of sidewalks, which is basics, we need to all just come in and give them a start. Once we've given them that start, then they will be able to cope with it. But without private sector and the social and the civil societies and everybody else stepping into that to just get us over this hurdle, just lift us up, we won't be able to save our city. So we are doing the doing. Initially, we didn't think we would. We are very clear as well that we are not throwing money at this. It has to be a process of people stepping up and stepping into the process instead of handing money over to the government. That is not going to help really solve the problems that we're busy with. Long speeches, but the essence of Josie My Josie, as we are asking and talking to different corporate organizations to come and join us on this journey of ours. There's ESG funding, there's CSI funding, and when you look at social investments, making a real difference and an impact in somebody's life, that's why we're sitting here. We're trying to bring the human dignity part back of the people of South Africa. We are focusing on a number of work streams. So we are focusing on safety and security that needs to be improved before anything will change in the city. And that's basically countrywide. I don't think Joburg is special or different than other metros or municipalities for that matter. We're just bigger, and it's on the global stage how bad it is. So we have to face that and work with it. We are very active in the social space, where we are working with homeless people with social ills, and the problems that exist around human settlements and social development. There's very little policies and procedures and solutions from government side on how to solve the problem that we've got. Joburg alone, conservatively, we're looking at about 65,000 people homeless, sleeping cold every night, who doesn't have what's their next step? Where do they go? Where do they go for assistance? So when we talk policy and procedures and white papers and blue papers and green papers and the whole rainbow, it is coming up with sustainable solutions that is practical and that will solve the problem. Data, always the issue. There is not enough data to understand the problems that you're working with. So from our side, we're coming up with data as fast as possible to analyze it, to come up with solutions that is sustainable and influencing policy all the time, back to local, provincial, and national government, sustainable solutions and practical solutions to solve problems. Education is our third work stream, where we need to get our kids the education that they deserve. There's a terminology that I heard, they talk about the lost generation. Guys, under our watch, we cannot face our children and our grandchildren one day and look them in the eyes and say, we didn't get involved. We cannot afford a lost generation of any kind ever again. So Josie My Josie, education is a massive part of what we're doing. Working together with the Oppenheimer Trust, the Department of Basic Education, getting as many of our partners involved. If you guys are busy or organizations are busy with programs that you are trying to uplift communities, education, safety and security, get out of the silos. Silos is killing us. Share the knowledge, share the learning, so that the next crazy people who attempts to make a difference, we don't have to waste time in making the same mistakes. We can move a lot quicker. Our end goal, human dignity, means people have jobs. It means they are safe, and it means they are, we've made a difference in terms of poverty. So that is our North Star. There's a couple of steps that you have to do to get there, but that is what we do. So I get the question, what is your strategy and your implementation plans? We're getting there, but we had to hit the ground running and make an impact as quickly as possible without spending 3 years and coming up with all of the paperwork. We just Geschidoed our way straight into that. And Geschido is a term that we use. We borrowed that from IQ Business. It means we get stuff done. I substituted the stuff. But my message actually to everybody who's involved in social investment from any perspective, or whether you are responsible for your CSI or your ESG budgets, or your companies are passionate about making a lasting, sustainable difference, join us. We work closely with BUSA. We work very closely with all of the corporates. We have over 200 partners already in Josie My Josie, where they get involved, not necessarily throwing money. It's sharing knowledge, sharing experiences, giving us advice. And then we sit together with government to make sure that those advice, that they take it to heart. We influence policy, procedures, governance, all the way from national government down into Joburg. So, lots of words. I say it quickly because time is running out, but I hope I did some justice on what it is exactly that we are trying to accomplish. Thanks, Lisa.
No, thanks, Bea. And you've knocked a lot of the questions I had completely off the block. But and you did allude to it, but I really wanted to ask. And I mean, you said things like, and other partners have also here today said things like, words like collaboration are big words. What do they really mean anyway? You mentioned no egos. I wanted to really understand how you align all the diverse stakeholders, but behind this shared vision for urban change. It's high stakes, it's high complexity. You are dealing with the city of Joburg, which is also got a rotating door with our mayor. I really wanted to know, how do you align over what your priorities are, what you focus on first? Where do you start?
For us, we started with the basics. What is the basics that needs to be in place? And that's from our perspective in terms of our strategy. So basics would be water, electricity, it would be safety and security, and it would be, those three were the big ones. What we had to analyze, what would our impact be in terms of water security? Not a lot, but we know people who knows more than us, so we pulled them into that work stream. Electricity, same thing. We're not the experts in that, but in some of the other areas, like the 5 I've mentioned, we have real life experiences. And what we are doing in terms of aligning what needs to happen is our policy is we're doing it from the bottom up. We're doing it from the inside out. We are not arrogant enough to think that coming from the northern suburbs, you know what needs to happen in the inner city of Joburg. You need to listen to the people on the ground. Every single precinct has got community leaders. The bad buildings, the hijacked buildings, there's community leaders. There's councillors everywhere. There's a very formal structure, actually, that's a living organism in the city. It's listening to those people to understand what is it that would make this city functional again. It is very dysfunctionally functional at the moment, but for us to make it functional, listen to the people on the ground. What is it that they need so that you don't spend and waste money and funding and opportunities and time in solving some of the issues. So having listened to what would make the biggest impact in people's lives living in the inner city, those learnings were what we took to the city and to the council. This is what is required. So if you take out all of the noise and all of the fluff out of the IDP and the processes and the budgets, which is a culmination of years and years of just doing the wrong things, get it back to basics but quickly. So that has been what we've been driving with the city, is focusing on doing the basics. It's like a zero budget where you start from scratch again with losing all of the wrong things that you've done so far. What is it we need to do now to get to a functional city as soon as possible. And the city and the officials working with us are incredible. They know what to do. They've just been hampered by a lot of political interference, to be quite honest. So we are at a point where when we go into meetings, the politicians need to leave the room. Let's talk business, mano a mano type of thing. We need to work with the officials so that we can fix this city as soon as possible. So hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming that all the corporates on board are in exactly the same, it's not like one saying we want to focus on this and one saying you all kind of coming in with the same level of
It is. So when you look at the corporates that's supporting us, the problem that has also raised its head over the last couple of years with corporates genuinely wanting to make a difference and wanting to do good, because doing good is good for business, right? Is that we've landed in a situation where Anglo-American will spend 200 million in education and Liberty will spend 200 million in education and Discovery will spend 200 million in education, but again, in silos. Imagine we've worked together and we could stretch the resources, how much more of an impact we could have made. So I think that is the model that we're trying to adhere to at all times is, guys, these are the projects. We're very open, very clear about it. This is where we want to end up with. I think as soon as you understand the North Star and what the vision would be for the city to be functional, that is when corporates actually starts working together. You'll find that different banking institutions, I mean, their employees aren't really allowed to be friends, so strict are their rules, but they are now working together because it is a shared vision and it's a shared drive, and we are allowed to do that together, and our resources get stretched 3-4 times more than what it would have been if you did it alone.
Wow. I know that it's early days, but can you share any examples of tangible transformation that you've managed to drive to date, either in a public space or an economic opportunity?
There's a number of them, and please understand it's year 2 for us. So, but based on just the actions that we've had already, there's a park in Hillbrow, and I don't know whether you guys hang out in Hillbrow Yeovil. It's not the best space to really hang out and drive through. People are very scared of that area, but there's a park right in the middle of Hillbrow, behind Ponty Towers. It's called the Donald Mackay Park. That park was so full of drug dealers and other vagrants that the community itself could not use that park. There was a beautiful basketball court and a small little soccer field. When we went to that park together with a number of our partners, or when we spoke to the communities through the councillors, etc., because we wanted to focus on what is the worst place we could find in Joburg so that we could start our projects there, make mistakes without anybody knowing it. Anyway, so we landed up going to this park. When we spoke to the community guys, they said that their kids, after school when they come home, the kids are in the streets because most of them live in small little apartments, or it is a shared space, or it's a bad building or a hijack building. So the kids roam the street, and that's where they get up to a whole lot of nonsense. So if they could only have a safe space for the kids to be after school and weekends. So the park came up. We spoke to the city who said, and we asked them, can we help you with this park? And they're always very, very happy if anybody wants to help them. They're actually not as unapproachable as people think. Long story short, we upgraded that park. We put security in the park. There's solar lights in the park, so that's always light there. We fixed the fencing. And it's all through donations or contributions in kind. We started a food garden there where there's gogos looking after the food garden. The community knows each other. They know who's struggling and who hasn't eaten for 2 or 3 days. And they provide them with vegetables, etc. You can come and get it there. We upgraded and fixed the basketball court. We fixed the gardens, the soccer field. Now when you drive there, so we were done with this project at the end of November. Not one incident of crime. There hasn't been a drug dealer of any kind in that park. And it's a big area right in the middle of that area. They're not coming back because the community took that And they are now looking after it. They took ownership. And that is what we're trying to do with all of our projects. The community now looks after it. So it doesn't require continuous funding to be put in there. The community now does it. The kids are playing there. They've got little basketball teams now. They've got same kind of colored T-shirts, so they've got their teams. It is incredible to see. And the kids are off the street. There's a safe space for them to be. So that is one thing. Building communities and safe spaces, very important. And then the example of Nelson Mandela Bridge, when we started Josie My Josie, that was the very first project that we did. That iconic bridge that is known worldwide, except for Table Mountain, that is a picture that you'll see together with Ponte. The lights were stolen, the glass panels were all vandalized, there was graffiti over that bridge. It was just a disgrace on what the city allowed that bridge to become. So we kind of made the decision, if we cannot fix the Mandela Bridge, then we can't fix Joburg. If we can fix the bridge, we can fix Joburg. So that's where we started. Now the bridge is complete, the glass panels, the graffiti, the color lights are working again, there's solar street lights in that whole precinct. That bridge is the main path from Wits, which is in Braamfontein, to where the Breer Street taxi rank is, right on the other side of the bridge. The students are supposed to cross that bridge. They come to the taxi rank, to the Breer Street taxi rank. They're now supposed to walk across the bridge to Wits. That was such an unsafe area that the kids had to use the taxis to go literally 700 meters from the Breer Street taxi rank to the university. They couldn't cross the bridge. It was just so unsafe. A lot of bad stuff happened on that bridge. Just by upgrading that area and working with the taxi associations, which is a big part for us. Everybody just always excludes them. They're the villains. They're not gonna do anything. By talking to them with dignity and respect, both ways, they are now keeping that area clean around the taxi ranks, and they're making sure that it is secure. We've fixed the bridge, and then Wits and Liberty together with the Braamfontein improvement districts, keeping the other areas safe. The kids are now free to walk, which means there's there's a big shopping center in Newtown, and then you've obviously got the vibrant student area in Braamfontein. Those precincts, we could connect with each other, and both, from an economic point of view, benefited from that. So sometimes it's a small thing. You don't have to overthink anything. Sometimes it's a basic thing like put the lights on and stuff happens.
Wow. And, you know, something you just said there, and I suppose this is my last input before I open it to the floor, but, you know, your comment around the taxi associations and that not leaving anyone out who might generally be thought of as being on the periphery or not being helpful or, you know, having a bad reputation in terms of wanting to be part of something like this. I suppose the question really is, are you writing up the lessons of what you're implementing now to inform a broader approach to urban investment that maybe other cities could follow, you know, in terms of replicating in their cities? Because Joburg's our biggest and our flashiest, but certainly not the only one that's fallen into disrepair.
Oh, absolutely not. So we had to do some research, obviously, before we started, how did other cities around the world in the similar situation, and there is a cycle. Cities go up and cities go down. I mean, we've seen the example worldwide, but what did they do to turn them around? What did they focus on? So the lessons from that was that every city that managed to turn themselves around, and look, there's enough examples, New York, Berlin, Barcelona, Detroit, there's a lot of examples. There's an anchor business in the city, an anchor that brings people together. It used to be mining for Joburg. So we had a saying right in the beginning, the city of gold, but the gold is now in our people. So the people are the ones that needs to anchor Joburg. And what about people anchors Joburg? It's education. We need Joburg to be the education hub of Africa. Not just South Africa, but of Africa. Let us retain our talent here. Let us make sure that we don't get our skills and share them with the Americas or with Europe. Let us save our own continent and our own country. So having said that, the model is definitely designed that we can replicate. Each metro and city is slightly different to the other, so it is easy to adjust and just tweak it a bit. But the model that we're trying to put in place of true and honest collaboration, what that means, who should be involved in it, and what the process would be, that model we are trying to replicate to other cities now. We're already talking to Cape Town, who's now started their own Josie My Josie. They call it the, oh my goodness, there's Adam. Yeah, I can't remember what they call it. So Cape Town is ahead of the pack by far with what they've done, but they also need to go to a phase 2. So we've spent a lot of time and effort with them. We're talking to Bloemfontein, for example. We're talking to Haberga, trying to get that right, and then funnily enough, Kimberley. So our model is already being rolled out. We don't want to be the custodians of this. We need our country and our continent to work. We're just the facilitators to get the process going. We need to share.
Thanks, Bea. So it's actually so exhilarating. Thanks. Your energy is very exhilarating and so positive. Makes me want to get out there in my...
Roll up your sleeves and come help.
Okay. Any questions from anybody on the floor? Alex, I'll bring the mic to you.
Alex Kumala from the Minerals Council. We used to be in the city. We left. And there's one thing that's missing. I love your energy. I do not know if, well, let's rewind 6 weeks back. President of the country goes into some rant about how terrible the city is, and he lives here, the same city. And I thought to myself, geez, number one is in denial. So my question goes to the municipality. Are they also in denial? Because some of the things that I'm not hearing is how the city is actually taking a lead in all of this. There are some basic things that if the city got those things right, a lot of things would change. So while the Mandela Bridge might have been fixed by now, I haven't been to Bree-Texerank, but that city remains filthy. You go to my village where I live, there's a traffic light that in the last 700 days has probably worked for like 14 days, and it's over a highway. That is a node between this side and the West Rand. The economic cost to the city of that traffic light not working for more than 2 years is huge. So I am not 100% convinced that the city has taken it upon itself to be part of the solution of sorting out the city of Joburg. I mean, I don't even know who my mayor is. So I am not involved. I haven't rolled up my sleeve because I do not see the city as a partner in this. I mean, I can't speak for the whole of the mining industry, but the ones that you have spoken to other than maybe Anglo, they will say to you, the city is not playing its part. And I think that is the key cog in all of this. You can multiply the 200 entities that are in there into 400, but the city needs to do the basic things. By law enforcement, for instance. I mean, I've seen Metro Police throwing rubbish out of their vehicle as they drive. And I'm thinking, there's a city official who is supposed to be enforcing the little laws that we have in the city. So, my question is there truly buy-in from the city? The city is big, yes, I know, but that's the question. Is there buy-in? Because if there isn't, I can guarantee you that, we will keep on doing this. And by the way, Vusani Madoroba started in 1997 when I worked for government. We worked on the city regeneration, urban regeneration programs. And 30 years later, we are regenerating a city that has actually gone through the troops, basically. So, commitment for me is one thing, and I don't say it. Help me.
It depends what level you're working with. So there is a lot of collaboration and cooperation and support from the officials just below head of department. So it is, and to be honest with you, the political influence is not just on MEC level, it's also in CEO level and a little bit lower than that. So politically, they're talking the right things, they're saying the right things, they're not there yet in terms of doing. But when you go into the different municipal entities and talking to the guys whose jobs it is to do that, and they've now developed a war room type of concepts where the city and all of the issues, they are actually now open and honest about what is wrong. They previously were in denial. Some of them still are, that no, it's not as bad because I live in Hyde Park or I live in Sandton, and what are you talking about? And I think that was the issue with number one. He wasn't in the inner city, and he was shocked. I was shocked that he was shocked. I mean, really? This is your town, that you live here, you drive around here. But to your point, we have found that the drive and the commitment from a certain level who has the mandate to deliver is incredible. They've been looking for a way and an excuse to actually do their jobs and to get around the interference that is very, very rife in the city. So that level of government who has the mandate to make decisions and who has the mandate to influence budgets and approval to allow, for example, outside organizations like ourselves to come in and do things, that is definitely in place. They are very, very open and honest and transparent about what the issues are at the moment, and they let us in the door. So our cards are on the table, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the war rooms, it is people facing the ball, not the person, the ball. We have to focus on what is wrong, how can we fix it sustainably as quickly as possible without coming back and spending money on the same problem again, because that's also the issues. They keep on spending money and it's not sustainable. So my experience is twofold. One is that we get a lot of talk and noise and good words, but nothing happens. Those people are now sidelined. And through the presidential work streams that the president has established, which are chaired by national government, all the different spheres of national government, co-chaired by somebody from the city and the private sector. So we sit on those committees. Takes a lot of time and effort, but we get a lot of traction. And the moment that national government, through their different departments, see that there's somebody who's blocking it, or they're not really in it for the right reasons, or whatever the case can be, they get moved out. That working streams and working groups are focusing purely on getting stuff done and getting it done as quickly as possible, but sustainably. So there's no holy cows, there's no elephants in the room. We fight that, your hair will raise when we have open and honest discussions with each other. There's human rights, civil society, the JCA, which are constantly suing the city with a whole lot of issues. They're very big opinions on what is wrong with the city. We call them and say, you've got an opinion, come and sit in the committee and help us solve it. So human rights people, you're going to sue us afterwards if we do anything wrong. Come and sit in the session, in the working groups, and help us so that we do this right. So that is the purpose of collaboration. Everybody who needs to have a voice in this process, come to the table, come help us design this process. It is all the way from processes, procedures, governance, who can sit on boards, who cannot sit on boards, how can you become a CEO of a different municipal entity. Those things all gets addressed there. This is really, in my view, one of the best things that could have happened to Joburg is the G20 coming, and we weren't ready, and we have to get ready. It gives us the ideal opportunity to fix it. We're not fixing it because of the G20. We are fixing it because we have to. We have to make sure that our country succeeds. And yeah, I'm very, very hopeful. Otherwise, I wouldn't have sat here with a smile on my face. I get a warm, fuzzy feeling when we come out of those discussions, and the intent is really real to solve it, but it will take everybody to jump in, roll up your sleeves, and help us. I think that is, So I want to give you some comfort and hope that it might just be that the first time ever that people are doing this together, we're going to see progress.
We've run out of time, but there are lots of questions for you, Bia, so don't run away. And all that remains is for me to say thank you. It was wonderful engaging with all of you and hearing the details of the initiatives, and thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks on behalf of